Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, we are talking with Ivan Cole, managing director at Mazars USA, all about AI adoption in the Microsoft space. Mazars is the sponsor of this episode, and it's really a chance to dive deeper into some of the topics in a webcast Ivan recently ran for the MSDW audience with his Mazars USA colleague and Microsoft MVP, Chris Segurado, about adoption and momentum of AI in the dynamic space. As Microsoft accelerates its deployment of AI-related capabilities from Copilot to Azure OpenAI Service, customers and partners alike can see the vast potential. But all AI isn't created equal. With the popularity of generative AI today, Ivan has noted the tendency for people to confuse it with other capabilities like machine learning and natural language processing. Ivan explains how he untangles some of these fundamentals, and he also shares his outlook on why an AI framework helps guide businesses in their approach to the various technologies. All right, well, Ivan Cole, thanks for joining me today. I thought we could maybe just start by asking you to give a bit of an introduction to our listeners.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Really happy to be here. My name is Ivan Cole. I'm a managing director at Mazars in the US. I've been working with Microsoft Dynamics my entire career, and I'm part of the Microsoft Business Applications practice as part of the Management Technology and Consulting group at Mazars.
All right, very good. Well, I'm looking forward to talking to you today really about sort of the present and future outlook for AI in the Microsoft space. You and your colleague, Chris Segurado, recently did a really interesting conversation about where things are in the Microsoft ecosystem when it comes to developing AI-related technology, applying it. And so I really wanted to get into a bit of that here. I thought maybe starting at the beginning for listeners, can you give a little bit of perspective on when you're having conversations or new conversations, about AI, perhaps with a client or an organization that you haven't talked to before or who hasn't really engaged in this, thinking about it much so far. What do you find that people tend to understand, and what areas do they still need education in?
When we first talk to clients, some of them have had some experiences with some generative AI, some have not, but they're all really curious. What we do find that's very, very common is there's a little bit of education we want to do about drawing the differences and similarities between data science, machine learning, and generative AI. And people tend to just lump AI, to mean everything. But they're very different technologies, and they behave differently. And their use case applications are also very different. Now, when we talk about those distinctions of large language models and natural language processing and machine learning or robotics or data science and analytics, we want to talk about all of the problems customers are having that they want solutions for. Some of them may get categorized into machine learning. Like, for example, if we were to talk to a retailer, they typically like to have good inventory forecasting. Well, they might talk about that as a problem they want to solve, but that's a data science, machine learning capability, and we already have a lot of that today in Dynamics and other ISV solutions. So we would still want to solve those problems, but it's not necessarily generative AI. So we try and draw those distinctions so we can talk about what are the best use cases for generative AI and what's the low-hanging fruit. And one thing that generative AI is really good at is word-based interactions rather than math-oriented. Although they're getting better with ChatGPT's code interpreter, we can actually analyze data and automatically generate Python scripts. So it's really powerful. But to that point, you have to use the right tool to solve the different problems. So we want to ideate on the best use cases, and we want to still tackle those data science problems, but we also want to see where's the low-hanging fruit for generative AI. And there's a lot of tasks that are low-hanging fruit, like marketing content, product descriptors, idea generation, research, as long as you have web capabilities. So we want to make sure that customers understand the differences as they're ideating about what are the areas that they're thinking about for AI.
Yeah, you bring up so many of the challenges or some of the issues that were really top of mind for me as well. And what you were just saying, I think for me, just to add on, one of the, I think, real challenges is, and it's such an interesting one that we sort of see there's this consumer hype over AI and generative AI specifically, like you were saying, and sort of the application of essentially the same raw technology in commercial settings, but with very different implications and sort of different needs and requirements and all that. And I'm sure we'll get into here. It's just such an interesting sort of convergence of those things that I can't say I compare it to any other sort of trend that's really become so, popular in the business space.
Yeah,
maybe mobile phones or smartphones when they first came out, that's maybe occurs to me. And the idea of apps for everything, that was pretty prevalent for a while. But anyway, I mean, where do you start then? When it comes to like Copilot specifically with Microsoft and generative capabilities that they're starting to introduce, one of the challenges to me is you're seeing so many of them all at once across different elements of Microsoft's commercial cloud. Are customers really enthusiastic about putting particular tools to use, getting certain benefits out of it right away?
Absolutely. And as you've already seen, Microsoft is, I'm going to say, quadruple down on AI in the cloud programs and the cloud technologies. But customers should really focus on really what's available first today. So the first place to start is Teams Premium. So that's a license you can get today, and it allows you to do a transcription of a Teams meeting, and it will automatically do AI-generated tasks and summary of notes and focus on the content that's most relevant to the user. So that's a great automation using AI that's available today. The next product that's actually been available for a bit is a product called Viva Sales, although it's being renamed to Microsoft Sales Copilot. And that plugs into CRM. It sits in Outlook and it looks at your CRM data and allows you to auto-generate email responses and would understand, like, is there an opportunity outstanding? Was there a customer request? Was there a customer complaint? And help draft those responses. You still need a human in the loop, but it'll do that initial drafting using generative AI to help automate the flow of data of information from the users of the system back to the consumers. And I think it's a great add-in that was done very, very quickly by Microsoft. The other area that I think customers should explore today is if they have any developers internally, they should be looking at Copilot for GitHub. So that's basically having AI sitting directly in the code editor as the developer's writing code. Now, as we said on our session, in my experience, I believe it'll significantly help an experienced developer write code much more efficiently. Microsoft's saying over maybe 55% more efficient in terms of writing code. But I would say, in my view, it's for an experienced developer. You still have to understand what the code's supposed to do to get those benefits. But I think that's a great place to start experimenting with a product that's actually available for customers to deploy today. The other area is AI in Power Platform, Copilot for Power Apps, Power Automate. We're in early stages of those, but customers should be certainly experimenting with those. One of the areas I think that's got the most capability today is Copilot for Power Virtual Agents, where you could build, bots that communicate with, clients or internal users. And it's configurable so that you can inject AI and also search websites, connect to SharePoint sites internally, securely, so that your data is leveraged to enhance outputs, but again, without sharing any of that data back with Microsoft or OpenAI or anyone else. So that's a really good area to get started. Now, Microsoft has always had AI Builder, not always, but for quite a while, AI Builder in the Power Platform. That's one of those spillover technologies that borders on data science, not necessarily generative AI. But again, those can be combined with some, being able to view an image and then interpret the data and then do something with the data, maybe with a virtual agent or some other tool. So those are another area that customers should experiment with. Recently, Microsoft also announced Bing Chat Enterprise, which is in preview. So that's basically for your commercial data protection instead of using Bing externally. And, Microsoft has no eyes on the data, and the chat data is not used to share, to train models and the things that you want to protect the secure data. Now, the area that I think is the most exciting that's going to be coming is Copilot for Microsoft 365 or the modern work applications where it sits in Outlook, Word, Excel, PowerPoint. And that's a really exciting thing when we can, just go into the tools we use every day and have them available. The example that Microsoft used that I think is one of the best is, pointing to a statement of work document in Microsoft Word and then asking AI to generate a PowerPoint presentation based on the contents of the document, and it builds the slides based on the scope, deliverables, timeline, risks, all the things that you want in a kickoff meeting, and actually build that PowerPoint presentation for you. I think that when it gets out to a number of users that are using these tools every day, I think it'll be extremely beneficial and really make an impact. And then, of course, we're all here to discuss what's coming in Dynamics 365 Copilot for CRM and ERP. Microsoft has definitely embedded key elements of AI into those applications. That, I would say, is also early days, but Microsoft is committed, from what we're seeing, to continuing to enhance and build tools and features of those products to start to take advantage. We gave some examples in our session. I won't go through all of them today, but I love the project operations example where what if you could just have it generate a project status report and looks at budget to actual and tasks completed last week, tasks scheduled for next week, and automatically builds that presentation. That would be really efficient for a project manager. And then the final thing I want to say about, as customers look to get ready, as they look to deploy tools, whether it's OpenAI's ChatGPT or, more importantly, Microsoft's Azure OpenAI service, they're going to want to get ready for the security Copilot so that they can get, Defender and Sentinel in place, and more importantly, Purview, so that they can make sure that all the security permissions are appropriately established, so that if a customer did want to deploy their own Azure OpenAI service and integrate with their data, their security is kind of ready and enabled to respect all the internal security, so they're protecting their data in the best ways.
I wanted to maybe double back a bit because you covered a lot of ground there, which is great. When you think about the impact of some of these capabilities, can you sort of get a little more granular on perhaps what this will actually mean for a role or maybe a few roles that you've had in mind? You touched on sales, you touched on project managers. Are there any that really jump out to you in terms of how you envision like a particular way of working changing as a result of this?
That's a really good question. It's a really important question. And the responsibilities of people, I believe, will change. But I also want to point out that when we talk about implementation of AI, we make really clear in all of our frameworks and our discussions that you still need a human in the loop, that it hasn't really made any of that go away. Now, can it make people more efficient in what they do? Absolutely. The example I like to give is if a developer is using Copilot for GitHub and they can be more efficient and get things done faster, customers are going to be happy to get features done in half the time, and they're going to add on new features to be built so that they can help differentiate themselves in the market or cut costs or other things. So they're going to take advantage of that efficiency, wherever they can. But again, you need an experienced developer to get those gains. So in my opinion, it's not going to remove the developer jobs. It's just going to make them much more efficient, so developers can do a lot more with a lot less. Now, the other area that I think is really going to help people is just creativity, ideation, research, keeping in mind that if you're doing research, if you need current information, you need to use either a plugin with ChatGPT or the Bing search so you get current data, because as you know, most of the models are trained up until September 2021. Again, using the right tools, but having it jumpstart ideas and kind of invigorate people to get things done quicker and give them ideas about how to start something. I find that when I'm working on something and I need assistance from generative AI, if I do a really good prompt, I can get about 80% of the way there I want my output to be. That means that I still have to edit about 20% of it, but that's really good for me in terms of it gives me the chance to really have it sink in, make sure that I correct any errors or misunderstandings that I thought I might have, which happens from time to time, and to make sure it's the output that I want as a human. So we have to make sure there's a human in the loop, but the opportunities are really significant. If you take it down to dynamics, having a purchase order that's being shipped on an ocean freight, on an ocean cargo ship from another country, and if it could do predictive analytics to say, hey, there's going to be a delay because there's a storm coming, let's either ship it to a different warehouse. That was one of the examples that Chris gave. To automate the data in dynamics based on generative AI, looking at kind of external factors that could help the users managing that data be more efficient, I think is going to be a great enhancement. But in my view, it's not going to eliminate people from managing purchase orders. It's just going to make sure they can do more with less.
Very interesting. Yeah. Another area that I did want to touch on while I have you here is comparing out of the box Copilot capabilities with plans that ISVs or partners have when it comes to custom capabilities or productized AI capabilities that go beyond what Microsoft's putting into these Copilot solutions, which are obviously, like you said, a great place to start, but certainly not going to be enough for everybody in every organization in every scenario, right?
That is probably true. And I think one of the things we're big on is, helping clients ideate and figure out, what are the use cases for AI and, what is the effort to get it to automate the way they would want. And that's going to change. Microsoft is going to continue to embed features into dynamics and applications that we use every day. But Microsoft, I think more than any other of the AI developers, has paved a path for customers to be able to integrate the customer's data with external systems that they may have on their tenancy, and using the Microsoft Azure OpenAI service along with, let's say, cognitive search and other capabilities like that allow us to incorporate that internal data with Dynamics in a safe and secure way. Now, I've seen a lot of plugins and startups. So, one area of caution is, be careful about a startup that's got a great idea, but they may not be there 6 months from now. So again, Microsoft's paving the way for us to build these integrations and providing all the tools and examples on Microsoft Mechanics. They give, really good walkthroughs of how to do this, even providing source code examples. So this is one of the key areas and focuses of our Safe AI framework and our approach in helping customers figure out what are the use cases, which ones are easy to do, which ones require a little bit of an effort in order to extend it or customize in a way that they need with their data, with their systems. And we're helping to build those roadmaps in the best way. The last point I want to make on that is, customers should be monitoring the Microsoft Release Planner. That's it. You've probably seen this at experience.dynamics.com/release plans. They're constantly updating that, and the schedules for features that are coming, Copilot features are listed there. It's worth keeping an eye on what's coming.
I did want to go back to frameworks and also security a bit more here. So you touched on some of the security ramifications and also some of the ways that I guess AI capabilities within Microsoft security services are going to begin to work. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means and what people should be paying attention to there? And I don't know, even tying that back into, like you said, your own framework for development and grounding it in that?
Yeah, so we put a lot of thought into what we believe that we need to work with and clients need to work with in terms of best practices and guardrails. We've developed our Safe AI framework, which is focused on secure, factual, adaptable, and ethical best practices and guardrails around those areas. It's really a logical and sensible approach to AI adoption. And in the security area, we want to make sure that, number one, we're not sharing our data with OpenAI, and the terms of use state that if you use ChatGPT, that by default you're sharing your data to train external models. We want to make sure people understand the obvious things about not typing in social security numbers or tax ID numbers or things like that, making sure that they're not exposing any internal data in any ways that are unsafe or undesirable. On the adaptability, we talked a bit earlier about figuring out what are the best practices, what are the best use cases for generative AI, and how are we going to adopt that change in the organization? Some of those use cases might be low-hanging fruit, where you can just use the Azure OpenAI Playground or ChatGPT Plus and get a result and use it in some work document. Others might require some development, so we have to figure out, what is the effort to integrate it and then implement that change within the organization. So people were used to doing things one way, but now they're using AI, they're enhancing their process. We have to make sure to document those changes and make sure people are using it in the right way. I've said before that things have to be factual. A human has to be in the loop, and we have to verify the sources, and we can't just take whatever it gives us at face value. It has to be reviewed. It has to be monitored by a human to make sure it's what we want it to be. And that is going to require some automation, some training to make sure of that. But we have to make sure that people understand that really clearly. And on the ethical side, we have to make sure that we have a policy and a governance. People have to understand what it is you can and can't do. They have to understand the terms of use with OpenAI or Microsoft's OpenAI service of what they can and do with these models and understanding the basics. And many of the companies we've talked to, they really want to use AI. They've experimented with AI, but they don't have a policy internally, even a written policy of what they want to explain to their team members of how it should be used. I'm not a big fan of banning the tool, and I've seen that in some cases. I've seen some organizations ban, let's say, an OpenAI service directly, but open up playgrounds for the Azure OpenAI service because it's in a secure tenancy. So I think it's important for people to ideate and use it and experiment, but they have to do it in a safe way, and they have to do it in a way that actually gets the results. And we want to make sure that customers are using the right tools and providing secure AI adoption that works best for each client.
I would just take from what you were saying as well that there's sort of a development, a maturity in the thinking in the way that organizations will approach this. That sounds like that's one of the most interesting things looking forward.
Absolutely, which is why we have to help determine the governance policy and understand the words about what their teams can and can't use and how they do it in a responsible way. Now, one area to focus on is, you may have heard the term AI ops, like DevOps, but for AI, where we do best practices behind AI adoption, integration with existing data and systems, governance guardrails about how we ensure security and compliance and in how we're going about it. And again, I want to confirm that Microsoft has paved the way for customers to implement securely using the Microsoft Azure OpenAI service and cognitive search and other tools in the Azure platform. And our objective is really to help them architect and roadmap these optimal paths for their organizations. Microsoft's also done a lot of work on their own and published one of their research papers on a maturity model that they published for AI and how to help clients figure out how to kind of understand where they're at and where they have to go in terms of how they're going to use AI in a safe and secure way. So we're going to help them, transition properly. Our goal is to continue to work with clients. We're working on now a form of a safe AI catalyst envisioning workshop where we could do an overview of AI, kind of provide some example of how it could be used, and then do ideation, prioritization. We may use techniques such as story pointing to determine, what kind of effort, or a RICE method to determine for each idea that they come up with, what's the reach, impact, confidence, and effort, so we can establish an ROI and a roadmap and help them really figure out how to get to where they want to using AI, and then how to prove the ROI and the return on it as they're doing it. And we think that's going to be an important facet of how companies are going to effectively adopt AI internally.
All right, excellent. Ivan, it's been great getting a chance to hear your perspective on this. It really does kind of bring a lot of topics together. Anything else you wanted to leave people with?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us. We're really excited about everything Microsoft's doing with Copilot. We're excited about having a really strong point of view with our Safe AI framework and continuing to work on workshops and helping clients figure out how to implement in the best way. We're very closely tracking what Microsoft's doing with Copilot and really excited about how this is going to help Microsoft Dynamics customers really be more productive going forward.
All right. Well, such an interesting moment in time here. I look forward to continuing to follow it and hopefully checking in with you again soon as well. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks once again to Ivan Cole for joining me today. And this message from Mazars: journey with Mazars and discover AI's enormous potential while ensuring its use aligns with best practices for security, adaptability, factual integrity, and ethics. Learn more about the Safe AI framework at the link in the show notes. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. For all of our updates, please do follow us on LinkedIn or on Twitter. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.